This is my last video of my stroll down memory lane of when we moved to Rhode Island from California. My husband and I were in our 30s, and an idea was brought up about moving to Rhode Island, and in less than 3 months I was in Rhode Island looking for an apartment. I found an apartment in less than a month's time, and at the time we still didn't have jobs in Rhode Island. I was able to get an apartment, and then I flew back to California and proceeded to sell all of our stuff. So we sold as much as we could, and anything that we had left fit into a large moving truck, and we moved across the country. So I have a video talking about our idea, the move across the country, and finding an apartment. And this one is about buying a house within the first year after moving to Rhode Island. It was in the summer of 2015 that we got serious about trying to figure out how we could buy a house. We wanted to try to buy a house before our lease was up. So our lease was going to be up March 1st of 2016. Now, in the summertime, I remember we started to look at homes. And at that time, I still did not have a full-time permanent job. I did work for a temp agency, and it wasn't until September of that year that I did find a job. So already our situation was going to be a little bit tricky to try to get approved for a home loan, because we both had new jobs in another state. And so usually you have to have 2 years, at least 2 years of working in the same industry. So I happened to take a job in a completely different industry, and my husband did too. But that didn't hold us back from still trying.
Since we moved to the ocean state, naturally we wanted to live near the ocean. And at the time, you could find homes under $200,000 or around the $200,000 range. And we found one in this area. But the house was under 800 square feet, didn't have a basement, and it had a cesspool. The cesspool had to be replaced within the first year with a septic tank. And because we really didn't even have the money to buy a house at the time, we knew we weren't going to be able to replace the cesspool. So this was the private beach for the house that we were looking at, and this way was the neighborhood, so we would have been able to walk to the beach from our house. This is an area we would have loved to live in. It's right by the water, and we actually found a house that was within our budget. But the problem is it had a really old furnace. It's called a snowman furnace. Plus, it wasn't really updated, and there was only one bathroom upstairs. It was kind of awkward. But it was within our price range, and we fantasized that, oh my gosh, we would be walking distance to the water. Unfortunately, we did not put in an offer because we knew we'd be able to buy the house, but not be able to update it or fix it up. So this became something that we only come back to and fantasize that we lived here. This was another neighborhood we looked at. This is a neighborhood where basically we came to reality. And this neighborhood is called the Stadium neighborhood, and that's because there's a stadium in the neighborhood from the late 1800s. They originally raced cars in this stadium. But luckily for us, we found the other home, and this one, when we put in the offer, it was a short sale. So even though we had an offer in on this house, because of the time frame and a short sale was still pending, we did have the option to be able to get out of this contract. So it was one of those things where, thank goodness, we had the opportunity to get out of the contract, because really we loved the neighborhood we were renting in. We just didn't like renting an apartment, and the house we really wanted became something that could be a potential reality.
Ideally, we wanted to actually stay in our neighborhood. We really liked it. It was really central in Rhode Island, and it was right by a bike path. There were a lot of restaurants and stores that were within walking distance from our house. Our son was able to walk to his school, and he was going to be close to his high school as well. He would be able to walk to the high school there. Also, it was, 10 minutes from Providence, and Boston 1 hour, New York City 2.5 hours. So we really liked it. And we got to know our neighbor across the street. So we just liked it. And it was by chance that a house had been on the market that was in our neighborhood. It was actually literally right down the street from where we were renting. But at the time, it was out of our price range. Then the price dropped. And at the time, we had an offer in on another house. But my husband was relentless on trying to get this house. And I told him, I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to qualify for this house. And he said, and I told him, call the agent, you do it. And he did. He followed through. He called the agent. We looked at the house, and it was something that we liked. Now, it was going to need work, so it was a little bit of a fixer-upper, but you could definitely move into it. So luckily, we're somewhat of DIYers, and we're also people that can visualize the potential of a place. Another thing that we looked out in, and it just seemed like the stars began to align for us to be able to buy the house that we bought. So the house was in our neighborhood. The agent showed us the house. And then on top of that, she had a loan officer that she worked with. And she said that she likes to have her clients go through that loan officer so that she knows whether or not they'd be approved. And at the time, originally, there was an offer in on the house. But we had the loan officer run our information. And this loan officer actually knew what she was doing. Because prior to that, I had been dealing with different loan officers to try to get a pre-approval on a loan. And because of my experience in banking, the mortgage industry, I knew that they really didn't know how to look at the possibility of qualifying somebody for a loan that would be outside the box. Because definitely we were going to be outside the box for trying to qualify for a loan. Also, our neighbor Frank, my husband was talking to him about how we had an offer in on another house, but we really liked the house right down the street. Well, come to find out, that was his late brother's house, and his nieces were selling the house. So that's another part that became to be in our favor. And then, come to find out, the original offer fell through. So now we had the opportunity to actually put in an offer on this house in the neighborhood that we liked, that was right down the street from our house. Luckily, we were able to cancel the other offer and put in an offer on this house. And the loan officer was able to pre-qualify us for a certain amount that we thought we might be able to offer for this house that was kind of close to what the list price was. So it wasn't until after the fact that we found out that our neighbor Frank told his nieces to go with a family versus going with an investor, because this would have been the type of house that would definitely have been sold to the investor. It would have been an ideal property to flip and sell for more money. Now, the reason it probably didn't sell at the higher price is because the photographs were not that great. I'll put some photos in, and luckily my husband and I could see past that. So by the end of January, we became homeowners in Rhode Island. All the stars aligned. And then that gave us 1 month to fix up the house before moving in, because our lease was up in March. So we got to work, and we worked on the house until sometimes midnight. We'd get home from work. I commuted and my husband commuted all over the New England area. We'd get home and we'd start working on the house. So the front room had paneling. We painted the paneling a lighter color. We were going for a gray color, but it turned out to be more what I would say an 80s blue. In the kitchen, the house was built in 1950, 51, I always forget. And the kitchen must have been updated in the 70s. So what I decided to do is paint the cabinets black. Now, there were no working faucets in the house either, but luckily my husband is very handy, so he was able to fix the kitchen faucet, which was a little bit of a challenge because the plumbing was older. He fixed the faucet in the bathroom, and then that's when we found out, oh my goodness, there are no outlets in this bathroom, so we had to add outlets. And it was a lot of work, but we did it and we got it done. And because of our horrible move across the country, we decided to hire a moving company to move us down the street. Now, when my husband was talking to the moving company to get a bid to move or get an estimate on moving down the street, I don't think they believed him that it was right down the street. So when they came, and they were talking about moving the stuff and how many trips they might need to make, and then my husband showed them, no, it's right down the street. And they said, oh my goodness, this is going to be so simple. So that worked out in our favor. But I'd have to say we're very lucky because of the time it was where homes were still, they hadn't start appreciating yet. So if it wasn't for that and everything else lining up, our neighbor Frank coming in contact with an agent that had a connection to a great loan officer that thought outside the box, I don't know if we would have been able to get the home. So yeah, it was great to have a place to call our own, and our son was able to keep going to the same middle school. He did have to go to a different high school, but the high school was right by our house. And it was just one of those things where we felt very grateful.